Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and we are live. Seb here, co-founder and CEO at digital adoption platform Melting Spot. I'm super excited to be here. Be very, very welcome to this new episode of our webinar series around software adoption. We're going to kick off in a few minutes and cover a super exciting topic today, which is the adoption of your CRM software and how to boost adoption to improve your sales performance. I'm just checking that everything is okay on the technical front. If you can give me a thumb up, give me a thumb up if you're connected and hearing me loud and clear, so I know everything's okay. Looks like the team is giving me the thumbs up, so we should be fine. But give me just one sec to check this. Feel free to drop your welcomes and your hellos in the chat. But besides welcomes and hellos, if you have any questions during this 30-minute presentation, please make it a super interactive session and ask your questions directly in the chat. Wherever you're logged in, if you're following us on LinkedIn, YouTube, or on one of our Melting Spot platforms, wherever you are, just drop your questions in the chat, so I'll try and take them on the fly during the presentation. I think we're good to go. We're going to give everyone a second to log in, and then we're going to kick off for the benefit of those who will be watching this replay. Okay. Cool. I think everything's all right. So we're ready to roll. Let me share my screen and kickstart this presentation. So we're going to cover the topic of sales enablement today, but with a quite specific angle, focusing on how to improve your software adoption. So it might seem a bit narrow as a topic. We're going to talk about how to better use a tool, and it might be pretty surprising to correlate tool adoption with team performance, but we're going to see that this is a big driver of the performance of a sales team. Adopting your software properly is a key driver to sales performance. So this is exactly where we're going to focus today. We're going to start with a few observations, and then we'll take it from there. First off, what we've observed by supporting sales teams with their software adoption, be it Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive, or any other custom-made CRM software, 36 days of productivity are lost every year by your sales teams for lack of proper CRM usage. Essentially, that boils down to about $4,500 each year by salesperson for pure lack of software adoption. So a huge impact on your performance. Only 23% of your preferred CRM features are actually used. You're all aware that your CRM softwares are super powerful. First off, they blend a number of different clouds and experiences and hubs, not just sales, also marketing, service. But that aside, if you focus on each one of those modules, even that specific module that you're using today, there's a high chance that you only use about a quarter of all features enabled. And with the rise of AI features, this number is probably going to drop even more. So our software is capable of doing a number of workflows across sales, marketing, service dimensions, but our teams only master about 23% of those workflows. And so there's a huge productivity gap here. 49% of your teams are actually satisfied with their tool stack. So they're disappointed by the software that you've purchased pretty much. So we're all aware of that number. It's likely that whichever software you've chosen for your team, about half of them are actually happy with the software. There's resistance to change, but we're going to dive in that number in a bit more detail as we talk through this webinar. And half of them also feel that they have received adequate training with their CRM. When you deploy a new CRM, your training plan is like well thought through, well-oiled process. You might have someone from the editor jumping in, delivering an onboarding session. That's great. But fast forward 2 years, the software has been used for a long time, but there has been turnover in your sales force, as there's always with any sales force. And your users end up not really knowing what to do, how to use the software, which processes to follow. And so this, like the lack of training, accounts for a huge gap in your sales performance. So very little satisfaction, a lot of underused features, and poor training. That's essentially what we're observing on the market, and this is the starting point of today's presentation. Another observation is the way the building blocks of sales enablement align, or actually don't align, in organizations. On the left-hand side, there's the theory. Your salespeople work along a number of workflows. They should be trained on skills first. So how to be a good salesperson. So mastering the basics of B2B sales, knowing your B2B arguments and sales materials, being able to respond to sales objections. So skills. Then come on top processes, like how have we built our sales cycle? How's our sales pipeline organized? Mastering all the processes behind your sales organization. Then tools come last, and all this. So mastering your CRM, knowing how to use Sales Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Service Cloud. But this needs to be organized along your workflows. As your salespeople start to engage with prospects, that training needs to be naturally provided as they work in the context of their work. That's the theory on the left-hand side. The reality is somewhat different. First off, the workflow sits on the side. So it's as if your training was designed to be delivered as if you were to pause your workflows and then train and then go back to your workflows. So disjointed experience, but often tools are laid out first, and then you try and create processes on top of your tools. And from a skills perspective, they're often delivered on the side, sometimes by the L&D teams, learning teams, far from the sales workflows. And so you end up with a bunch of salespeople that are meant to be delivering a workflow, but are often interrupted with training and tools, but that are not aligned with their workflow and that are not contextually delivered. And so this is, from my perspective, what really impacts the performance of a sales organization. Is there any questions so far? Let me just pause for a sec and check that you can hear me loud and clear and that all questions are efficiently addressed. I think we're good. Okay, so that's the starting point. If we dive into how organizations tend to address this problem, and if we focus on today's topic, which is training of the sales force, often what we see is that like getting to use your software properly, your CRM specifically, isn't always a smooth ride. If you look at how training is delivered in your organization, it's likely that there is some level of one-on-one meetings, like a consultant coming in from the editor or from your CRM admin team delivering a training. There's likely to be like training emails sent out to salespeople. There's got to be somewhere a knowledge base with a whole heap of tutorials that you can check out, but often you don't even want to dive in because there's so many of them. You can always speak to colleagues. You might have a specific Slack or Teams channel dedicated to salespeople where people can ask their questions, get responses. If you're structured enough, there might be an e-learning platform set up where you can follow step-by-step courses and structured trainings but often that lives on the side as well. And on top of that, you might have regular refresher webinars, masterclasses delivered by your CRM admin team or sales enablement team. But as you can see, all this experience is pretty disjointed and to be honest, quite chaotic. And so this is not the way you want to deliver training to your sales forces. There are a number of solutions to address that problem, and we're going to address the pros and cons of each of these solutions, and we'll come up with a blended solution, mixing up some elements of all these three approaches. Approach number one is using an in-app guidance tool to deliver contextualized training in your software, so in your Salesforce or HubSpot instance or whatever other CRM you're using. This is like a great way to deliver like contextualized guidance with pop-ups, tooltips, and interactive walkthrough directly within your interface. Super useful to highlight a new feature or to get your salespeople started on the tool. Typically great for configuration purposes, so great for the very first few steps using your CRM software. Not so good when it comes to actually building long-lasting skills. If you remember the picture I presented earlier, you don't get that skills component here, and you don't get that processes component here. You have some level of tool training, but you miss out on all the skills and processes using this approach. The second approach is actually a bit more structured, using an LMS system. In that case, you have maybe your L&D team is stepping in, or maybe you're reusing some learning modules from the editor. Typically, Salesforce has a whole heap of materials that you can choose from. You reorganize this, try and customize it to your own instance and processes, and you come up with an academy with a number of different modules that your salespeople can tap into to learn about your processes and your CRM. Problem, usually this feels like a library, a very thorough, very extensive library of resources that sits on the side, and you don't even want to open the lid. It feels like you're watching a shelf full of books, and that you don't want to dig in because you know it's going to be very generic. It's not going to be straight to the point, and most of all, it sits outside your CRM. So chances are you won't even ever discover that resource center because you'll be deep into your processes in your CRM, and you won't want to dive in. So not great if used separately to your CRM. The last approach is rather more manual, and this is probably like CRM training 101, and it's good in some respect. Essentially, training sessions along the lines of a train the trainers methodology. So you start training key users or champions around the use of your Salesforce or your HubSpot instance, and onus is on them to then train their teams. Works well, provided that you have brought together these people in a community and that you regularly provide refreshers to your key users. So it requires some level of continuous education. Downside to this is that it's not very scalable. It requires a whole team of admins and champions. You need to keep them engaged. It doesn't really address the turnover inside sales teams, and it costs a lot of money because it takes a lot of time to actually deliver those in person or even online trainings to your sales teams. So not scalable. So what's the best solution? Our view is that you need to like mix and match elements of all those three approaches and come up with a centralized, contextualized way to deliver your trainings in your sales flow of work inside Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive, or whatever CRM you're using. So you need to have guidance and training and some element of train the trainers brought together, blended under one single roof inside your CRM. And the way this should work is that whatever solution you're using needs to connect with your software and needs to synchronize with your sales user segments. So typically sales, marketing, service, and maybe also some element of maturity in the segmentation, beginners, advanced users. So typically sales people, SDR, BDRs, AEs with less than 3 months experience in the company or experience with your CRM. So once you've connected to your user base and synchronized your segmentation, you need to be able to identify user gaps or data quality gaps. So places where your CRM looks pretty ugly. Let's face it, sometimes all properties are not appropriately filled in. There are duplicates in your data set. Your pipeline isn't organized properly. If you know where those gaps are, like put a pin on them and make sure that training addresses those specific gaps. And those gaps might not be the same for your different segments. Someone new to your CRM probably needs to be trained around how to create an opportunity, how to use your pipeline, how to use properly pipeline stages. Someone more advanced will likely be more interested in dashboards and reports. So your gaps need to be specific to your different segments. And thirdly, you need to create the appropriate content to address each gap. Okay, so that's the theory of really what sales enablement should strive to achieve using the appropriate processes and approaches. Before we dive into a concrete CRM software example, let me just see if there's any question from the audience that we could address. We have a question here from Emily asking what types of training content work best when delivered directly inside the CRM. In fact, any training material can be delivered inside your CRM. I haven't introduced Melting Spot earlier, but we're a digital adoption platform, and we support a number of different learning experiences that you're able to drop inside your CRM. And those learning experiences mix and match synchronous, asynchronous communication, typically, obviously, tutorials, text, videos, but also live learning. And I think this, you can never get enough live masterclasses, refreshers, presentations from the CRM team to educate your sales force. It's good to confront them live, take their questions, answer them on the fly, and not just rely on e-learning and on-demand material. So you should really try and leverage all, do blended learning pretty much. And so I'm going to show a few examples of that in a moment. Thanks, Emily, for that question. And we also have a question from Kevin asking, how do you keep products and sales playbooks up to date directly inside the CRM? Well, first off, CRM softwares have features where you can store playbooks, sales materials. So I'd start there, just use the features that you've paid for in your CRM. The other way to make sure that everything is up to date is also to typically delivering live training every now and then. By definition, live training is up to date. And also typically providing light training materials that are easy to maintain wherever possible. So typically, if you have a process for creating a quote in your CRM, outlining the steps of that quote creation process in a very light tooltip inside the navigation of the quote creation flow is something that's easy to maintain. And so don't go overboard with your training materials. Sometimes just a few lines of text hovering on a little widget in your CRM is good enough. that would be my take on that. Cool. Let's we're going to start the second part of that webinar and go very practical using an example. CRM is the obvious choice when it comes to sales enablement, and that's the focus of today's session. Complex tool with lots of adoption gaps. Admin teams often overwhelmed by support tickets of like SDRs, BDRs not knowing how to log this or that. It's a very central tool, not just for sales teams, often used by ops teams as well. Lack of training identified, as I said very earlier in this presentation, 50% of users feeling that they haven't been trained enough. So great candidate for in-app learning. Let me dive into an example here and fire up a demo. Assume that this is your CRM instance. Using Melting Spot, here I'm like a bit of self-promotion here, using our platform. The way you're going to be able to deliver in-app training is as follows. So you've identified your key segments, so typically sales, marketing, service, and beginners, advanced users. You've identified your training, your gaps, so use cases where your CRM isn't properly used, and you've come up with learning materials to address these gaps. And using Melting Spot, you can drop these materials inside the flow. Take an example, creating an opportunity, sometimes, often, like many gaps in the process here. So when you start creating an opportunity, what Melting Spot allows you to do is typically give a nudge to your users and explain to them what they should be inputting where. Using simple tooltips like this, here in this lead source field, you should be inputting this or that. Or coming up with a more structured way of explaining and covering the process behind this form by explaining how you should be naming your opportunities in Salesforce and taking a step-by-step course. So a bit more structured, probably 5 to 10 minutes work to take this course. Read a video, maybe watch a video, and then fill in a quiz to make sure that the skills have been appropriately mastered. So if you have too many errors in your quiz, you can go back to the course and make sure you've mastered the topic there. So a more structured way of guiding your users. Other formats, we've touched on them, taking Emily's question, but live trainings is also a great way to get your sales teams up to speed with new Salesforce features. Taking Salesforce as an example. Agentforce is out. Maybe why not have one of your sales champions deliver a training on how to use Agentforce or Agentforce 101 for beginners. And that training can be delivered inside the Salesforce org. And that makes a huge deal of a difference. Rather than sort of sending them an email that they will never check out with a link to a Zoom invite, hoping that they'll save them to their calendar and actually show up on the day. Why not deliver that training live in Salesforce with email reminders and whatnot, but at least things are happening in the flow of work. And an even more structured way of training your teams could be to build learning path from scratch, from the ground up for each segment using your CRM. And here what you're saying is, this is a learning track that you need to take and follow. It might take a few days to complete, but you need to check out each and every item on this list before you start inputting the CRM. So don't touch on any CRM objects until you've ticked all those boxes. And you can build your own process. Could be pretty basic, could be a long process made up of a course for, I don't know, mastering the naming opportunities, a document to check on the Salesforce website, another course for mastering the creation of a quote, so on and so forth. And at the very end of the process, what I love about this this concept of learning tracks is maybe your users got lost in the process. They didn't follow steps. Why not offer a live session with one of your champions so that all questions can be answered during that session? So like learn at your own pace for I don't know, 2, 3, 4 weeks. And then in a month's time, be sure to join this webinar session. Jeremy, our sales coach, will take all your questions. What a great way to train your teams and make sure that they're on top of your CRM. Hope you concur with that. The last format, which I actually like a lot, is the ability to also bring some element of peer learning in your sales enablement techniques by giving your teams an opportunity to interact with each other, but not generally, but really concretely ask questions around a particular feature in the CRM or an area where they're not sure. Typically, I use HubSpot reporting every single day, and I find it hard sometimes to create the right report, add it to the right dashboard. So why not add a little widget like this one next to the dashboarding capability, where your teams can ask questions, share ideas. If your teams have started using Agentforce, why not have a forum where they can ask questions around how to use the tool, how to improve their prompting techniques, here in the context of the CRM navigation. So as you can see, we're not reinventing the wheel. You could have an e-learning. You could have it like a library, of e-learning modules sitting in an LMS somewhere. You could have like a Teams or a Slack channel with your sales teams. You could host video conferences with your sales coaches. But the whole difference is that everything is organized, happening in the flow of the work inside Salesforce in this example, and everything is tracked. So your Salesforce admin teams or your sales enablement teams can follow progress and team capabilities. That was the presentation I wanted to give, the example I wanted to use. Now is the time to finish up. We're going to stick to timing. So I want to conclude with the benefits of in-app training or in-CRM training. One of the very first benefits is continuous learning. Unlike all other techniques, like in-app in-CRM training, supports continuous learning like no other approach. Training is delivered over time, improving the proficiency level of your teams and addressing turnover. The second benefit is that you're observing improved adoption. Once you master a feature, you're a lot more likely to use it. And what we've seen is that adopting new features happen 3 times faster when you have proper in-app training in place. Another obvious benefit is the deflection of support tickets. There's no number here, but what I've seen is that about 50% of support tickets are no longer happening within 3 months if training has been appropriately delivered and followed by your sales forces. So and the cost of a support ticket in CRM maintenance is about $30. So it adds up quickly. And so there's a lot of money to be saved here. And the last benefit is a bit more qualitative, but you're finally aligning your processes, your tools, and your knowledge and your team knowledge by making sure that the building blocks of a successful sales enablement strategy are actually laid out in the right order and in the flow of work of your sales teams. That's it for today. On the clock, we're right on time. Let me just check that there's no other questions from the team. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop me an email. Let me just show my contact details here. Feel free to contact me at Sebastien@meltingspot.io with any questions. I'd love to take your questions, show you around, take concrete examples of melting spot users that have delivered in-CRM training in Salesforce, HubSpot, or even Pipedrive. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. And we coming session at mid-December, focusing on software adoption. So check out our upcoming events on LinkedIn, YouTube, or on MS Nation. Thanks for your time, and see you around. Enjoy the end of this year, and speak to you soon.